In this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Black Order affiliation. In a world where all the crisis cards have changed, tactics cards have been rotated out, there's been a big change to Thanos and what he can do on the board, and some of the gems have had a bit of a shake-up too. Hey guys, Rich from Rich Big Gaming. I hope everyone is doing fantastically well. Welcome to this, another MCP video, and continuing our series where we're going to be breaking down each and every affiliation. I apologise for there not being a video last week. All sorts of things got in the way, but we are working our way through the alphabet and we are going to be taking a look at Black Order. Black Order are in a little bit of a precarious position at the moment. It is now the only place that you can play Thanos using his gems for free because it's now part of his leadership. With the changes that happened to some of the character cards quite recently. And it's a really difficult one. Black Order were not in a particularly good spot. I would say overall, the changes to crisis cards and moving away from, first of all, getting rid of 15 threat really helps Black Order because they did not have a strong 15 threat, and with 16 being the lowest now, I think that's a big plus for them. Thanos having the change so that he doesn't have the really weird leadership on the reverse side of his card, meaning now that if you just kill a non-grunt or KO a non-grunt character, you gain a VP. Now, obviously, they have changed it to non-grunt, so you kind of lose a little bit there as well. And I think overall, they have probably dropped down a little bit, but I still think there's some playability there. And I think there's still a really fun affiliation to take. So we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to jump into what I think can work for them, some things to avoid. And let's start off by taking a look at the main man himself, Thanos. Thanos the Mad Titan. Now, we've done multiple deep dives on Thanos, but really the thing that we want to be looking at here is that death's agenda. When an enemy non-grunt character is KO'd, this character's controlling player scores 1 VP. It's how we're going to be scoring the majority of our VPs in this, or not the majority, but getting those extra VPs in this game. It's obviously a leadership that doesn't turn on until at least round 2, unless you do somehow manage to, 0 to or 20 to 0 a Hulk in the first round. And then obviously the other part of the leadership is going to let him use his gems for free because now he doesn't get to do that. He can also take 2 gems. Now, what gems do we want to be taking with Thanos? Well, Thanos has an option of any of the gems, so he can take absolutely any of them. But realistically, there's going to be 3 gems that you are going to consider taking on Thanos. First of all, is going to be that mind gem. Now, why is the mind gem so important? Well, Cosmic Portal can now no longer affect enemy characters. It's only your own characters. So that's a big thing. So this is the only guaranteed displacement that Thanos now has for your opponent. Yes, he's got the throw on his strike, and yes, he's got the push on his Cosmic Blast. Reality Gem, this really helps Thanos with his damage output. It really helps Thanos with survivability as well, because again, we spoke about in that video that gems making characters more expensive, their baseline stats don't increase. And whilst this doesn't increase his baseline stat, it does mean that he's able to count 1 failure as a crit. Again, this has had a slight change in that the failure can now only be rolled on the initial roll. So in the past, you could count it at any point, and it doesn't work on interactions. So it's only going to be attacks, defense, or dodge dice. Now, the problem with Reality Gem is there is somebody else who wants to be using that. So that then leaves us with the Space Gem. Choose this character or another allied character within 3, place it within 2. So again, it's a range 2 bump for Thanos, which does turn on a number of things. It does mean that Thanos can be a midline extract grabber turn 1, so a slightly different play style, but that is there. Or it means you can move any of your allied characters either up the board, back onto a point, whatever it may be. So let's take a look then at some of the characters, and we do have one other leader for Black Order, and that is going to be Corvus Glaive. Now, he is a 4 threat, but as you can see there, he is able to bring either the time or the reality. The time gem just isn't worth it. It costs too much power to use. And the reality gem, having looked at the stats and the numbers, even though now he has to pay the 1 power to use the reality gem, it's still going to be significantly better. Again, it's going to do 2 things: significantly increase his damage output, but also increase his survivability as well. We've also got that Husband of Proxima Midnight. This is going to really help us with retaining priority. But let's take a look then at his leadership card, which is going to be First of the Black Order. If your squad does not contain Thanos the Mad Titan after deployment when you would normally select your leadership ability, an allied Corvus Glaive may play this card, and he gets Right Hand Man. When an allied Black Order character dazes or KOs an enemy character, all allied Black Order characters gain 1 power. It is not very good. These tactics cards as leaderships, they have additional costs to them. There is obviously the fact that you are taking up a tactics card slot unless you're convocation. So you've got the opportunity cost of, well, if I take this, it's 1 less card that I can take. So if you're going to have that, you want the leadership to be worthwhile. And unfortunately, this is not worthwhile. 1 extra power on all your characters. Black Order, traditionally under Thanos, less so under Corvus Glaive, they're going to be playing slightly taller rather than wide, and 1 power just really isn't that good. As we mentioned, if you are taking Corvus, you do want to be taking him. I still believe with that reality gem, and as we mentioned, he is 1 part of a duo. We've got a couple of duo characters in this game who work well in pairs. And his wife is obviously going to be Proxima Midnight. Proxima Midnight is not to be sniffed at. A long move with a range 3. It's not a builder. It doesn't generate power, but it's a 0 cost attack that has a guaranteed range 1 place off the target at the end of it. Can be really good. That strike is quite nice with the pierce on there as well. Quantum Starburst, if it does damage, bleed, poison and stun, can really cripple an opponent. She's got martial prowess, so she can roll extra dice in defense. And then obviously she has the wife of Corvus Glaive, so you can mix and match. You can go with Corvus first and then activate Proxima as long as you're within 3 and you've got a power to be able to do it. Or you can activate Proxima first and then go with Corvus. Invulnerability as well, so again, just increasing that survivability. But as a 3 threat, she is pretty darn good. They do bring a team-up tactics card called Execute. When Corvus Glaive targets an enemy character with an attack that is within 1 of an allied Proxima Midnight, or when Proxima Midnight targets an enemy character with an attack that is in 1 of a Corvus Glaive, both characters may spend 2 power. The enemy character rolls no defense dice during this attack. Now, still in the game, Corvus Glaive with power being able to do a glaive's edge and a death blow is one of the highest single target damage dealers in the game. You add in execute to this, all of a sudden you're rolling 7 dice at least, can be boosted by Thanos up to 9 or even up to 11 if he's on his injured side, and your opponent doesn't get to roll defense dice. You can be into the realms of not maybe 20 to 0ing a Hulk, but remember you've got Proxima's initial activation as well, and then 2 attacks potentially from Corvus. You're getting into the realms of being able to take out a big character within a single activation. Now, the other really nice thing about Proxima and Corvus is the priority control that they bring. Let's say you're playing at 16 threat, your opponent is playing at 16 threat. You may have priority. That means if you daze or KO one of your opponents during your first activation, under usual circumstances, you would then lose priority. Priority is going to be so important for Black Order. Being able to make those first attacks really important. Well, the nice thing about having that dual activation within a single turn is that you retain that priority, meaning that because you've activated back to back, you now only have Thanos to activate, for example, and your opponent still has 2 characters to be able to activate, meaning you're going to be able to have that priority at the beginning of the turn, KO somebody, and then retain that priority at the end of the turn as well. Let's take a look then. So, as I say, I think the fact that Black Order now, or the crisis cards start at 16, it really does help Black Order out quite a bit, because that's where they want to be. You would often see, sometimes even at 17 threat, Black Order players playing a point down, and you would often find Black Order being dual affiliated. So you would take a different leader for a different affiliation. You take these, characters, Thanos, Black Order, Thanos, Corvus, and Proxima as your 16 threat. And if you've got a 16 threat, that's what you would go for. Now you can go up from that. So if you had a 2 cost in there, you could go to 18. If you had a 3 cost, you could go to 19, so on and so forth. But then if you needed to go to a 17, you could play this at a point down, depending on what the set was. Or you would take something like Wakanda, that you can play at 15 comfortably, and can also play at 17 comfortably as well. But this really has been, for a long time, the core 16 threat of Black Order. And whilst, there's a couple of other options in here, I think if you're at 16 threat, this is probably where you're going to be sticking with. I think this is probably still the best that Black Order even have to offer at 16 threat. Now, what are the downsides to this 16 threat? Well, the big downsides are, if you want to go do a midline extract grab, you basically have to use Thanos. You have to use Thanos, which, when it's a 5 cost and a Namor and something like that, you don't mind too much. But when it's what will be an 8 threat character, that's a little bit brutal. But it's less impactful now, because Thanos, whilst he can deal out and dish out damage, he was always more of a control piece. So the idea being that, he would use that cosmic portal, he would use the mind gem, and he'd be moving people around. So how does Thanos do a midline extract? Well, it's really simple, straightforward. He gets to use the he gets to use the space gem for free. He bumps himself up 2. He can then do a medium move, pick something up and move back. And what he can also do as well is use a cosmic portal to be able to portal up either Corvus or Proxima. Probably Corvus, because he has less movement than what Proxima does. Proxima's got that long move with that range 3 attack and that range 1 place. And you'll find that if you do it in that way, you're probably going to be able to do that dual activation. This is just turn 1, remember. So that dual activation might not be as important. Might be better just to save the power and just have a Proxima, move up, make an attack, get to a point, or double move to a point, something like that. So yeah, this is probably the best that Black Order have to offer at 16. It is still very killer. It is, susceptible to some big hitters, but some of those big hitters have also been neutered as well. So the likes of Thor, or the new version of Thor, has definitely gone down a little bit. They really don't want to be playing against characters like Web Warriors, where there's a really, really strong extract play. They want to try and keep things nice and tight in the middle, and ideally they really want to be trying to at least daze an opponent round 1 if possible, with a view that then you get that KO into round 2, and then you're able to sort of carry on that train of just dazing at least 1 character per round and then KOing them the next round. But let's have a look at some of the other options, because this most definitely isn't the only option that Black Order have. And remember, what I'm building out here is going to be a purely Black Order roster. You can definitely mix this up by putting another affiliation in there. So let's have a look at some other contenders then, all the other Black Order characters. First of all, we've got Black Swan. She is a 4 cost, so the same baseline cost as Corvus glaive. Little bit different, but again has a huge amount of damage output that she can do. Now she's going to be bringing the power gem with her, and this is one of the few characters, or maybe the only character in the game, where I think the power gem works. Why? Because she gets an extra 2 power for having the power gem, which means that she's going to be generating 3 power per turn, which if you look means that she's able to do a charge turn 1, which is going to be really, really important. So that can be a charge with an I-beam potentially, that she can do there. If Thanos has moved her up, that medium move is going to get her far enough up the board to be contesting a point, so it could then be a strike where she's able to push the opponent away on a wild. Everything Dies is a pretty decent spender, so it's going to be range 2, it's going to be strength 8, cost 4, wild throw short, unlimited on that as well, so it brings some more displacement. And then on a hit, she's going to get follow-up. She gets to make an I-beam attack without paying the cost. You ignore the range and the line of sight. So if you do throw your opponent outside of range 3, you don't have to worry too much about that. Midnight Field, when this character is defending, spend any amount of power to use this superpower during the modified dice step of the attack. For each power spent, this character may change one wild attack to a blank. This is very, very similar to the original MODOK, but you've got to pay for it. But it does turn off a huge amount of things for your opponent. Now, what it's not going to turn off is a pierce, but anything else that's dishing out a condition on a wild, she's going to be able to turn off as long as she's got the power. And then telepathic suggestion, she can reroll one of your opponent's defense dice. So on the glance of it, 4/4/3, 6 stamina on a front doesn't look particularly tanky. But if you can generate some power on her, and she's got enough to be able to turn off the wilds on the opponent, and from the damage output side, being able to reroll one of your opponent's defense dice means it increases that damage output that she's got as well. She also brings a team up tactics card. We do love a team up card in Black Order. This is going to be in the form of Black Onslaught. If Black Swan is within range 2 of an allied Black Dwarf, when she uses the charge superpower, they may each spend 1 power to play this card. After the charge movement action is resolved, but before making the attack, you may place Black Dwarf within range 1 of Black Swan. Now, one of Black Dwarf's biggest problems has been that his mobility is not very good at all. You know, it takes him 2 turns or 2 actions to get up to the middle of the board and be in with the mix of things. 433 stat line, but obviously he's going to be reducing that by 1, all of the damage by 1. He's got intimidating presence, so he can take a hit. Black Fury, so he does have a terrain feature and enemy character throw. He's got a stagger on his brutal end, and his axe strike is not too bad. It could do with a little something in there, maybe a bleed or something like that. But 6 dice, range 2. For a 4 threat, as I say, it's about a dice more than average for your 4 threat characters, but it would have been nice to have just something extra on there as well. So let's take a look then at our only 3 threat option in affiliation, and that is going to be Supergiant. Supergiant, you look at that stat line and you're like 134. That's not very good, but when she would suffer damage from a physical attack or collision, you instead suffer 1. So that's the maximum amount of damage that she can suffer from physical damage or collision. She's got some interesting things. Submit is just a bit omnipathy even. With an enemy character within 3 of his character rolls 1 or more crits, you gain a power. She can also be the soul gem bearer, which kind of doubles up on that extra power generation. She does have something that is a little bit potentially crazy. Devastate intellect. Costs 8. And it's strength 8. If this attack would deal damage, it does not, and the target character loses power instead. So it doesn't deal damage, but on a wild, it's a stun. On a double wild, it's a stagger. And on a crit hit, double wild, double fail, if it's healthy, it becomes dazed. If it's injured, it becomes KO'd. The numbers on this are not particularly good. Now, how bad are the numbers? So it's 6.75% without any additional help. So not great. You know, that is not good odds for anybody. If you get access to a reroll, it goes up to about 10%. But bearing in mind, this costs 8 power. So realistically, how often are you going to be able to get this off in a game? Technically, you would need to be getting this off 20 times in a game, or maybe less, about 18 times in a game to hit that magic sort of 6.5–7%. And even then, you're very, very unlikely to be able to do it. She does bring a card with her as well. This is an unaffiliated card, but it is her team-up card with Ebony Maw. This works very, very similar to the Green Goblin and Dr. Rock card. So you spend 3 power each for her and Ebony Maw. They roll 5 dice for each character holding an objective token. They suffer damage for each crit and wild rolled, and then they drop everything they're holding if they take a damage. It's a great card on a character that costs 3 and a character that costs 4 that are okay, but not a character that costs 5 and 3 in the form of Ebony Maw and Supergiant when they're not really doing much else. Ebony Maw himself, again, he's in not a particularly good space, at least under Black Order. He gets to do some displacement. He's got a throw in there as well. He's got a terrain throw that is long, so that is quite nice. He does bring his own tactics card in the form of Shush, which again is a perfectly fine card. It can really stop your opponent making that big play. But overall, if you look at Ebony Maw as a 5 threat, and I don't think taking Ebony Maw with either the mind or space really works. They are 2 cards that you want to take on Thanos. If you compare him to what Corvus Glaive is going to do for you, or what Black Swan is going to do for you, I really don't think there's any competition from Ebony Maw at the moment. And then rounding it out, we've got the newest member of Black Order, which is Frank Castle, Cosmic Ghost Rider. We all know what Cosmic Ghost Rider does. He does bring an extra card with him called Servants of the Titan. During Cosmic Ghost Rider's activation, any number of allied Black Order characters may pay 1 power each to play this card. For each power spent, roll 1 die. For each crit, wild, and hit, and blank in the result, Cosmic Ghost Rider deals 1 damage to an enemy character within 3 of him. For each failure and block in the result, Cosmic Ghost Rider suffers 1 damage and gains 1 power. The problem with this is you generally don't have enough. So bearing in mind, Frank is 6, Thanos is 8. That is 14 threat already. Because spoiler alert, by the way, we're not taking Corvus's leadership. I just don't think it's good enough. So that's 14 threat already. So it means that you can't take another Black Order character at 16. You can take 1 at 17. At 18, you can still only take 1. At 19, you can still only take 1. And at 20, you can take 2. I believe. Yeah, you can take 2. So, no, at 20, you can't even take 2 because there aren't 2 3-threat characters. I mean, you could take... Yeah, you could take Supergiant, but... so the problem is that you're going to be rolling 2 dice at the most. Now, niche scenario, you've done all your attacks and you've left 3 people on 1 health. Then yeah, fine. Like, absolutely fine, worth it. It can damage Ghost Rider. That's less of a problem. Actually, giving Ghost Rider power isn't a bad thing. But yeah, realistically, I think this card is very, very niche and really isn't going to be consistent enough for you to really consider taking it. Okay, let's take a look at some other tactics cards. So the first 2, or the 2 that I want to take a look at for Black Order, are going to be Blood to Spare and Mothership. Blood to Spare, basically when one of your characters would be dazed by an enemy effect, it may spend 3 power to play this card. This character immediately performs an attack before gaining the dazed token. If this attack results in the character removing damage, it is not dazed. That's in there for Supergiant with her builder that lets her heal damage. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. And now there's a couple of things to note on this. The character that would be dazed is the one making the attack, but this is really important. They don't have to attack the character that dazed them. That's really, really important. And it's being dazed by any enemy effect. The other one, Mothership. If you've played Asteroid M with Brotherhood, this is exactly the same. 2 Black Order characters, spend 2 power each. If one of them, place one of the 2 characters not holding an objective token, so you can't be holding an objective token, within 1. It basically teleports somebody from one side of the board to the other. Can be quite nice in certain scenarios. Definitely a card I would consider taking for Black Order. So that is it for Black Order characters themselves. But obviously we need to round this roster out because not only are there not enough characters in Affiliation, we can't take all the Black Order characters. Some of them are just not good enough. So let's jump over and take a look at a couple of characters who I think could do a reasonable job. So starting out at 2 threats, we've got Toad and we've got Nebula. Toad is going to give us something that we don't really have, which is Not a completely safe midline extract, again, not considering Thanos because that's a big investment, but it does mean that he can be relatively safe, so that he's not going to be, at the very least, he's not going to be double tapped turn one, and then he can very comfortably just move back and just sit there with that objective, scoring you some points. Nebula, the complete opposite. Remember we spoke about how Thanos can boost dice. Well, under Thanos, that shock sword assault goes from 6 up to 8 dice, which is absolutely brutal. Even her builder and gainer go from 4 up to 6. And remember that because she's an assassin, she may reroll any number of attack dice. Yes, she's a little bit susceptible to being taken out early on, but once she comes back on her injured side, this girl has the capability of being able to take out 2 characters with 2 attacks potentially. Very, very good, very, very solid damage dealer. The other character I want to talk about is Mr. Masters, Taskmaster Anthony Masters. Why? Well, first of all, Taskmaster's a really, really good character. He's got some nice range attacks on there with his shield throw. His sword strike is absolutely fine. He's got the potential to be able to daze or KO an opponent during their turn, which again is really, really nice. If he's on a point, he's quite hard to take off it because of that intuitive pattern recognition. So he's going to add 2 dice to the second attack coming into him for that turn. And then his mnemonic technique costs 2, and it's range 2, strength 4. Now you may be thinking, well, that's not very good, but add dice to the attack roll equal to the target physical defense. And the target character cannot reroll or modify dice during this attack. So this is really good. For 2 cost, or for 2 power, you're able to boost that from a 4 up to realistically a 7 or 8 dice attack, because you'd only do this against somebody who has 3 or more physical defense. So he's a pretty good solid character into himself, but he gives us some options. He is a rogue agent. So when we're building our squads, he's going to count as an affiliated character. So what does that do? Well, that essentially gives us 2 options in that 3 threat slot with Proxima and now with Taskmaster to be able to build our roster around, or our squad around. So just giving us that little bit more flexibility. Let's have a look then at our crisis cards. What are we going to be taking? This was really, really difficult because there's a whole bunch of things to balance in here. But with secures, we went with Wedding Party Targeted, Deadline to Destruction, and Mayor Fisk. So, Wedding Party, why have we taken this one? Well, it's a reasonably low scoring with only 4 VPs available. And, we should comfortably be able to take one of those. There is a power loss in there, which, again, is fine. Deadline to Destruction. Now, this is double-edged, and I'll explain why in a moment. But first of all, what's it got going for us? It's at our 16 threat that we really like. It also allows us to do more damage by spending a power, choosing somebody within 3 that's got an extract objective token, and we can basically spend a power, do a damage, and if they're within range 3 of multiple, we can move around and do damage. So that is nice. Being able to do the damage is nice, but it is worth noting that at 16 threat, all of our characters, Thanos, Proxima, and Corvus, all reduce damage by 1. Thanos to 0, and then the other 2 to a minimum of 1. This gets around that because this is not character damage. This is what seen as sort of neutral damage, a bit like bleed. So it wouldn't be mitigated on Thanos. So it's a really cheap way for your opponent to be able to get damage into Thanos as well. So just worth pointing out on that one. And then we've got Mayor Fisk. Similar setup to Wedding Party. Why do we like it? It's 16 threat, which again is good for us. It's really tied in. So again, we're not going to be in a position where we're on a D map or a B map where it's really spread out. So it's nice and close in the middle of the board. Yes, again, this is another one that can do damage. That both helps and hinders us. But we're also going to be dishing out the stun special condition. Now, Thanos doesn't care about this. Some of the other characters do. So this one may be one that you want to swap out. I want to try a few games with it, see how they fare. Maybe mix up my roster a little bit to accommodate some other characters that are maybe immune to stun, or maybe just take this out completely and go for an 18 threat or something like that. But yeah, this is what I've gone for with the secures and the reasons why. Let's take a look at what we're going to go for on the extract side of things. This was really difficult, really difficult, because we don't want high scoring. We really don't want high scoring. So you may think, well, actually, Rich, why don't you just go 3 across the board? Well, we still need to pick setups and things that look good for us. So Deadly Legacy Virus, that is in there. We've got our normal 16 threat that we can take, and then we can, add another 3 on top of there, or we can start to mix and match this as well, and really start to shake things up. You can even take a Toad in there as well, who we spoke about, who does give us a potential out with those VPs that we can get, 6 VPs if he's got access, if he's holding all of them at the end of the cleanup phase. Fear Grips, this is going to be really nice for us. This does mean that we can do more damage, and we're not really that reliant on spending a huge amount of or tactics cards. We're not too concerned with them. The extra 1 power, we're going to be generating a lot of power as Black Order. Concerns for this, again, are obviously that midline extract play. Again, I think a good setup for this would be your normal 16, and then you take Toad with you, and then whichever side your opponent deploys on, let's say they've got a Namor or something like that, and they telegraph, you're going to put Toad to the other side to be able to go and pick that up. Maybe even, I think if you put Toad in the middle, I think he can get to both. I'd need to double check that, but I think he can. So you deploy Toad in the middle, and I do believe he has enough movement to be able to get to either of them. He's going to be that little bit further forward, but remember, we can teleport Toad back using that cosmic portal from Thanos as well, just to get him into an extra little bit of safety our next turn round. And then Unexpected Guest Crash Royal Wedding. 17 threat is a real struggle for Black Order. You really have 2 choices. You can play a threat down, or realistically then you're starting to look at dropping Corvus and Proxima. Why is Unexpected Guests in here? There are 2 safe extracts for us. We don't have to worry about that midline grab, where we're going to be a VP down, like we could be on Deadly Legacy Virus. But we can very, very safely go and get this. Now, it does mean that our opponent can as well, but again, with Thanos losing that cosmic portal, it's less impactful now, somebody moving up to the midline and grabbing that extract, and you being able to go and pick him off. So there we go, guys. Let's jump over to TTS. I have put a roster together, and let's go through and take a look at it. Okay, guys, so this is the roster that I've put together. Again, I think a pure Black Order roster is really, really difficult at the moment. But I think a good player could do some really, really good things with them. So let's go through and see what we have taken. Obviously, starting out, we've got the main man himself, Thanos. And then we do have Corvus Glaive in there and Proxima. We've gone with Space and with Mind on Thanos, and then Reality on Corvus. And that is going to be, our core 16. And if we're at 16, that is probably what we're going to be playing. But we do have a couple of other options in here as well. We did take Black Swan and Black Dwarf. Now that does give us a couple of options. It does mean that at 17 threat, we can switch, take Corvus and Proxima out, and we can play Black Dwarf, Black Swan, and Thanos. Now, this is going to be a struggle. We're going to be relying on Black Swan to do a lot of work here. But I think, I think it could potentially work depending on map setup and things like that. We've also got, who else have we got in here? That is going to be it. So we've just got the 5 Black Order characters. Our honorary Black Order member, Taskmaster, is going to be helping us out if we want to start doing some weird and wonderful things. We've got Toad, and we took Nebula. I think there's a place for both of them in this list, depending on whether or not there's a midline extract to grab, and depending on not whether we have priority. That will really determine whether or not we go with Toad or Nebula, and gives us a nice add-on to that 16 at an 18 threat, for example. And then we've got some big hitters. Look, we are all about wanting to murder people, and there's a couple of new releases who are particularly good at that, and they also bring some nice tactics cards as well. First one is going to be Nova. Nova is, in my opinion, a really, really good character. 4s across the board, a long move, 7 stamina on his front, 7 stamina on his back. He's got a throw on his Nova Burst. He's got a beam 5, 7, strength 7 that pushes everybody out of the way. So huge amounts of displacement and potentially damage as well. He's also got a charge, which is really, really nice. And it gives us rerolls as well on defense and dodge. So it gives us a little bit more potential survivability, especially in those clumped up scenarios that we were talking about. And then we've gone with Gladiator. I do believe Gladiator is probably at least my favourite 6 threat splash out there. You will notice we haven't taken Cosmic Ghost Rider. You could absolutely swap out either a Nova or a Gladiator for Cosmic Ghost Rider. If you swap out Nova, that gives you a 20 threat of Thanos, Gladiator, and Cosmic Ghost Rider. Now that means you need to take down opponents really quickly, and you're really leaning into the attrition side of the game. But we've got reactive attacks from Ghost Rider. We've got a reactive card from Gladiator. Another person that I thought of instead of Nova was somebody like Dracula, who pairs really nicely with Thanos, and Dracula still has some displacement on your opponent, can also attack back against your opponent as well. But I did go with Nova, but he's definitely an option that you could put in here as well. And as I say, it's a rough place, I think, for the moment for Black Order, but I do definitely think you can have fun with them. Let's take a look then at the tactics cards or the crisis cards that we've brought. As we know, we've already gone through these, but Deadline, Mayor Fisk, Wedding Party Targeted, Deadly Legacy Virus, Fear Grips, and then Unexpected Guests. And then we've got Black Onslaught. That's our team up card with Dwarf and Swan. We've got Blood to Spare, which is that's going to be, I would say, one of the stapled on cards, right, for this. We've got Brace for Impact. We've got Call for Backup. This is Nova's card. So if you look here, move along citizen, choose a secure objective token within 2. Push each enemy character contesting that objective short, which is nice. And he generates enough power after making a move turn 1 to be able to do this turn 1. Or, in the name of the law, stop in the name of the law, each enemy character that is holding an extract gains the slow special condition. So keeping everybody nice and tight, pulling everybody in. There is also unexpected guests. Actually, one thing I didn't mention about it is the fact that for each character that player controls that is not within 2 of a secure, they get a push. There is another one. Let me just find it really quickly. That's going to be scientific samples. So this one here, again, it's another sort of F-map setup. Additionally, during the cleanup phase, if all of the player's characters are holding extractor within 2 of 1 or more secure objective tokens, that player scores 1. So it means that your opponents can't run away, and if they do, they're going to be a VP down, meaning that it keeps everybody closer in. So, you know, if you didn't like Legacy, for example, or even you didn't like Fear Grips, you could take this. Again, 17 is it's a difficult number for us to deal with, but could definitely be an option for you. By the way, if we were going to swap out Nova for somebody like Dracula, you drop Call for Backup and you take something like Warpath. Execute, this is always taken if we're playing that 16 threat with Corvus and Proxima, or any other list where we're using Corvus and Proxima. Mothership, I think it's always going to make your 10. It may not always make your 5, but more often than not, I think it's going to be. Patch Up, just for that survivability. We want to keep Thanos on his healthy side for as long as possible, because we do lose that cosmic portal on his flip side. Now, less impactful because it now can't target enemy characters, but even so, we still want to try and keep him on that healthy side for as long as possible. We've got Recal Matrix, just in case, right? We do need, you know, we have a whiff of a roll on a big attack. We've got that in our back pocket to be able to deal with that. Survival's an interesting one. The reason I picked Survival is particularly around Nebula, but also potentially around Toad as well, but more Nebula. There could be a situation where we're playing Nebula and we do not have priority, and we've got a Nebula stacked full of power. Now, a Nebula stacked full of power on her injured side, as we've already mentioned with Thanos, is going to be able to dish out a huge amount of damage. So paying 2 power for her to be able to just guarantee being stayed alive, or at the most part guarantee being stayed alive. Obviously, Namor can take her out, as can Midnight Suns under Elsa, but that is really in there just for those lower threat characters, or any of the other ones as well, right? Who you're like, I really need Corvus. You know, we haven't done his big execute turn yet. I need Corvus alive. It's going to cost me 5 power, but spending 5 power is better than having him, you know, double tapped. Shouldn't happen as much with Corvus, because you should be retaining priority in there anyway. And then lastly, Protector of the Empire. This is going to work with Gladiator. Basically, if anyone is dazed or KO'd, you can pay 3 power. Now, what's nice about this is you get the opportunity here to be able to double tap your opponent potentially. So how would that work? Well, you would use, where are we here? Blood to Spare. The person that's been dazed spends 3 power. They get to make the attack. That doesn't have to target the person who initially made the attack or initially did the daze. And then Protector of the Empire can kick in as well, which can be really, really nice. And again, it's our opportunity to be able to score VPs during our opponent's turn. Now, it is worth noting that whilst Thanos' reactive ability does work on your opponent's turn, it can only be used once per turn. So if you used both of these, then you're not going to be able to use Thanos to boost both of the attacks. But even so, can work really, really nicely. And there we go, guys. That is my breakdown of Black Order. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I think there's some, you know, I like Nebula, I like Toad, and I like the flexibility that Taskmaster gives us. I think Gladiator and Nova are really good, but also they could be swapped out with other big hitters. Could you put Cosmic Ghost Rider in there? Absolutely. You can try them out and see what they play like in there, but I just don't think Cosmic Ghost Rider is good enough at the moment. Toad, also, I forgot to mention as well, does have that Incinerate. on his spit acid, which can be, you know, really, really nice. But there's lots of other characters that, you know, are big hitters. I did look at a couple of 4 threats, you know, Apex Predator. Sabertooth Apex Predator is very, very good because he has 2 attacks that he can make. He can throw a piece of terrain or a character and can then pounce as well. So he's got, you know, essentially 4 ways of being able to deal damage. But mix and match, play around with them. You know, ideally you want to be going quite tall with Black Order. That's really what you want to be doing. You want to be trying to maintain that priority as much as possible. If you can get a cheeky midline grab turn 1 with somebody like a Toad, then that's really nice as well. You know, you could look at a Namor or something like that, but I just think you're getting into the realms then of, well, that's going to cost us 5, so we don't have that potential when we're taking our core 16, for example. So that's why I left one of the sort of more traditional midline extract grabbers out. But as always, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Have you played with Black Order under these new rules? What do you think of them? Always good to hear some hints and tips from everybody else. Guys, I want to give a big shout out to all of our Patreons and YouTube members. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really, really does help with the continuing of the channel. And if you do want to support us, you can do so from as little as £1 a month. There'll be a link down in the description below. But as always, you don't need to do any of that. Just simply liking, commenting, subscribing really, really does help and goes a long way. We do have that target of 10,000. We're on our way to 8,000. We'd love it if we get there by the end of the year. So we're going to be trying to churn out, well, not churn out, but create more of these videos for you guys after that little hiatus that I've had. Check out the Discord. We're in the middle of our March Crisis event. If you want to take part in the next one, head on over. There'll be a link down in the description below. And as always, guys, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.